Hi, welcome to the CrafteeManatee. Today I'm going to be showing you how to crochet this Tweedledum Beanie. This beanie is great for beginners or if you're just looking for a nice easy beanie pattern. It is worked in rows instead of in rounds, so it's worked flat, worked back and forth, and then we close it up at the very end. So there's no need to worry about increases or decreases or anything like that. It's just worked flat, and then we will sew it together at the end. This beanie is also really easy to customize the size of. So this is a one size fits most beanie. The circumference is about 22 inches, but you can choose to leave off some rows or add on some rows to fit any size that you want. This beanie is also available as a free written pattern on my Rippler, so if you prefer to follow along that way, you can check out the written pattern as well. But other than that, let's go ahead and get started crocheting the Tweedledum Beanie. Here are the materials that you're going to need to crochet the Tweedledum Beanie. First, you're going to need about 180 yards of worsted weight yarn. We'll be using a 5mm crochet hook or the letter H. And finally, we will need scissors and a tapestry needle for cutting off the yarn and weaving in ends at the end of our project. To get started crocheting our beanie, we are first going to make a slip knot. So we're going to loop over our yarn and pinch it with our thumb like that. And then we're going to reach through the loop, grab the yarn, and pull it through. And we're going to tug on that yarn tail to help close up the loop. And now insert your hook through the loop and pull on the opposite yarn tail to cinch it down onto your hook. Next, we are going to chain 39. So we are going to yarn over and pull that yarn through the loop on our hook. And that's one chain. So we're going to do that for a total of 39 chains. Going to work our foundation row, and we're going to get started crocheting the Suzette stitch along this foundation chain. So for this row, we are going to skip one stitch. So we're going to skip that first chain closest to our hook and work into the next chain. And we're going to work one single crochet and one double crochet, both in that second chain from our hook. Now we are going to skip one and work one single crochet stitch and one double crochet stitch in the next stitch. And that's what we're going to repeat until one stitch remains unworked at the end of this chain. So we're going to skip one and work a single crochet and a double crochet stitch, both in the same chain. So as you can see, we're starting to get these clusters of stitches, and that is exactly what we want. So we're going to repeat that again all the way down until just one stitch remains. Once you have reached that final stitch that is unworked, we're going to work one single crochet stitch into that final chain. And now we can chain one and turn our work. We are now on to our second row, and this row is what we're going to repeat for the rest of the length of the beanie. And this row is very similar to our foundation row, except we're going to be working in the back loop only of the stitches. So as you can see, each stitch has a front loop and a back loop. So this loop here would be our front loop. It's closest to the front, and this loop back here would be our back loop because it is farthest away from us. So we are going to be working in the back loop only. We'll be ignoring this front loop and only working into that back loop there. For this row, we are going to skip one stitch and work one single crochet stitch and one double crochet stitch in the back loop only of the next stitch. And we're going to repeat that until just one stitch remains, and then we're going to single crochet in the back loop only of that last stitch. So very similar to the foundation row, except we are going to be working in the back loop only. So for this first stitch, we need to skip one, but that turning chain that we made does not count as a stitch. So we don't count that because we're already going to skip it. And we're going to skip the next stitch and work our first Suzette stitch into the back loop only of that next stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into the back loop only, work a single crochet stitch and a double crochet stitch, both in the back loop only. And now we're going to skip a stitch and do the same thing in the following stitch. I'm going to work a single crochet and a double crochet. And we're going to continue that all the way along until just one stitch remains. And it's pretty easy to see which stitch we're going to be working in and which stitch we're going to be skipping. You can see that some of the stitches are a little bit taller and larger than the other stitches. They stick out a little bit more, and that's the double crochet stitch from the previous round. And that is what we're going to be working each of our Suzette clusters into. So we're going to be skipping the single crochet stitch of the previous row and working into the double crochet stitch. So they do pop up a little bit more, and it can be helpful if you lose track of which stitch you're supposed to be working in. It's going to be those double crochet stitches. So we're going to continue working in the pattern until just one stitch remains. Once you reach that final stitch, we are going to work one single crochet stitch into the back loop only of that stitch. And now chain one and turn your work. You can already start to see the pattern taking shape. Working in the back loop only pushes those stitches towards the front, and as we work along this next row, it's going to push the stitches towards the back, so it's going to create this kind of rippled effect in the fabric. And now we are going to repeat row 2 55 more times, and that is going to be a total of 56 of these ribbed Suzette rows, plus 1 for the foundation row. So the total number of rows in this beanie is going to be 57. So I will meet you back here after you have worked row 2 55 more times. Alright, I am back with all of those rows completed, and this is what our beanie is looking like right now. You can see that the ribbed Suzette stitch made this really nice texture all throughout the beanie, and now we just have to close it up and do some finishing touches. The next step for our beanie is cleaning up this bottom edge here. So we are going to, instead of continuing working back and forth in rows like this, back and forth like we have been doing, we're going to flip our work so that we can work along this long end. So this is the end of all of our stitches here. It goes on for a long ways, and we're going to work on cleaning up this edge. And to do that, all we're going to do is work one single crochet stitch in every stitch along the bottom. Do your best to evenly space these out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but try to get one for each row. So we have 57 rows in total, so try to get close to that number of stitches along this bottom edge. So we're going to just insert our hook down into the first stitch and work a single crochet. And we're just going to do that all the way along the bottom, spacing them out as evenly as we can. Alright, I am done working that single crochet row along the bottom, and as you can see, it really just cleaned up the stitches and gave a nicer edge compared to this top edge here. You can see it just kind of cleaned it up a little bit and made it even. And I was counting along the way, and I made 66 single crochet stitches, so that's about 10 more stitches than rows that we had. That's perfectly okay, as long as it looks even, it's all good. Now we are going to be working on joining the two sides of the beanie together. So we're going to be working along the short sides here. And we're going to fold the beanie in half. So I just brought the other half of the beanie up. So you can see that this is what it's looking like. We have it folded in half, just like this. It's kind of hard to get it all in frame, but we're just lining up the two short ends together. And now we are going to single crochet the two sides together. So we are going to insert our hook through a stitch on this front half and through a stitch on the back half. So we have all of that on our hook. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through, and work a normal single crochet stitch. So you want to make sure that with each stitch you are getting this front half connected to the back half all the way across. Again, just work this as evenly as you can. Our rows were 39 stitches long, so try to get it roughly around 39 stitches. So we're going to just continue that all the way across. Alright, I have finished single crocheting along this edge, and I ended up working 37 stitches, so that means I missed a couple of stitches along the way, but that is totally fine. Nothing that I need to go back for. As long as that is even, the stitch count on the joining edges really doesn't matter too much, as long as it is still loose, not too tight, and the tension looks good. So now we're going to work on closing up the top part of the hat here. Now we're going to cut off the yarn, but you want to leave a very long yarn tail for sewing. So I'm going to leave quite a lot left onto the project, and I'm going to cut the yarn. Now we can fasten off, and we want to pull this very long yarn tail all the way through. I probably left too long of a yarn tail, but I always prefer to leave it too long of a yarn tail instead of too short of a yarn tail. So now we're going to go ahead and thread this long yarn tail through our needle. And we're going to flip the hat inside out. So we are going to flip it so that that seam that we just crocheted is now going to be on the bottom. And that means we're going to have to pull through this long yarn tail to get it over here, and to pull it all through. And now we are going to close up the top. So we're going to stitch all the way around the opening, and we're going to leave about 2 stitches in between each time we reinsert our needle. So we're going to insert the needle, skip a couple of stitches and pop it back out, skip a couple, go in the other direction, and we can pull through the yarn tail every few stitches just so that we avoid a mess of tangled yarn. And we're going to just continue that all the way around the opening here. Once you have stitched all the way around the opening, we're going to pull that yarn tail tight, and that is going to help close up the opening just like that. You can see we still have our starting yarn tail up there, but we'll tuck that in later. And we're going to just ignore that the best we can for now. So now that we have cinched it shut like this, we need to secure the opening. So I'm going to take my needle and insert it into the opposite side of the cinched up area into the stitches over here. And then I'm going to pull the yarn tight and insert it back into the same side just to help keep it tight. And now I'm going to insert my needle into a stitch over to the right of the opening. So just insert that there, pull it through. And now I'm going to insert into the left. And then back into the right to secure that. And we're just going to continue doing that until we feel like the top of this hat is secure. So you can see we still kind of have an opening here. So that means we need to do a few more stitches into different directions around the top of the beanie, just to make sure that that is nice and secure. And I'll meet you back here after we have secured that opening all the way. Now that we have finished securing this opening, we're going to go ahead and tuck in our yarn tail. So we are going to insert our needle through some of these stitches on the underside of the hat. So it doesn't have to be perfect because this is the part of the hat that is hidden, but we're going to just insert our needle down and through some of these stitches and pull the yarn tail through. And now I'm going to go in the opposite direction, but I'm going to skip one stitch so that the yarn tail doesn't pull out. I'm going to just insert my needle in this other direction and pull through. And now insert in the opposite direction. I find that going in 3 directions really helps the yarn tail and not pull out in the end. And if it does, it's definitely not going to completely come out. It might just need snipped a little bit here and there. And now we can cut that yarn tail off. And we are going to repeat the same thing to the starting yarn tail, which is actually down here. In the last step, it got caught up in the top, which made it look like it was coming out of here, but it had really just gotten pulled through. So the starting yarn tail is down here. Just go ahead and repeat that final step of tucking in the yarn tail. Once you've tucked in that final yarn tail, we can go ahead and flip the hat around, and now we are revealing the right side of our beanie. You can choose to add on a pom-pom like this beanie has on it. You can watch my tutorial of how to add a removable pom-pom to add that on if you want to. Thanks for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed learning how to crochet your own Tweedledum beanie. If you did, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more crochet patterns and tutorials. You can also find me on Instagram at CrafteeManatee, and you can find all of my patterns on Ravelry, Rippler, and Etsy. Thanks for watching. Bye.